All right, we will start with comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda. And not seeing anybody with comments there. We'll move on. Any amendments to the agenda?
No.
And we move right to our favorite part, which is announcements from the student representatives and student rep report.
All right, we have a couple of them. First, we want to start off with things that happened during this past week. Like on Monday, there was a MLK event at the high school with a lot of great dialogue that was happening. And that was during the day we didn't have school in his honor. And then also, last Friday, the Student Diversity Union actually went to elementary schools and was presenting like things also, and that was actually really cool. I had a lot of friends tell me about that. And then also this morning that the Student Diversity and Key Club members were presenting to the high school faculty at their meeting, talking about their kind of work they've been doing and their kind of general opinions. And then also to look forward, this Friday for high schoolers is the winter ball, and there's a social for middle schoolers. And then also it marks the end of the semester, so we'll be halfway through the year.
Lots of clubs and events were canceled 4 days ago due to weather. Last weekend on Saturday, PWA students hosted a high school musical cabaret at Spotlight for their class, but also to benefit Outright Vermont. Big Picture had their fall term exhibitions, which is Big Picture's version of midterms. They completed those last week. And I want to also mention that a big picture project of mine was a film that I produced called Looking Back at Me, and that was screened at the Agency of Human Services on January 12th, and we had a awesome workshop and dialogue and panel afterwards, and did a lot of work and conversation there, so that was really exciting.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I've heard it was a great film. We'll have to somehow find
Get
out
it.
when else there's going to be a showing of it, 'cause I'd really like to see it. I really would like to see it.
you
I
very
just
much.
want to add one announcement that the middle school had their play this past Friday and Saturday, and it was once again top-notch. I managed to make it to that on Saturday night, and it was just a great production, as they always are. All right, so,
A couple other quick things.
Yeah, sorry.
January 24th is a steering committee meeting, just again, for folks that are, hearing it. Again, this is a meeting between the city council and the school board, and presenting budgets and offering opportunity to ask questions.
what time, and what time is the meeting, 6 or 7?
7 o'clock,
7?
It's at City Hall this time.
and it's at City Hall.
Okay.
Yep, and we will be, obviously we'll be discussing the budget. In addition, the pre-town meeting, which is also a date to note, which will be before the Tuesday meeting, March 5th, is also, folks have an opportunity to come in to hear also information specific to the city and the school budget and ask questions. So those are some also dates to go along with those announcements.
Any other announcements? All right, we'll move on to city and school collaboration.
I think that pretty much takes care of it, actually. I could have waited and done it right there, but Elizabeth and I have not had the opportunity to, and actually, we haven't brought her in, or is Elizabeth
Yeah,
on?
she's on.
Oh, good. But we have not had an opportunity to meet with the city folks, just based on the schedule. Actually, they've had some problems with just being able to avoid conflicts, I think. So that's all I really have on city school.
Can I add one thing,
Yeah.
David, if that's okay? Tomorrow night, there is a visioning session about the new library. And the only reason I wanted to bring it up in this context was I was planning to go, just to be able to contribute and out of curiosity mostly. I just wanted to make sure we knew who was going and not going, because we don't want to end up with too many of us there.
Yeah.
Or-
So just, this is a good announcement too. The city has put out they're doing a visioning activity on both the library and also city center development. And so we received this, I think, I want to say, early this week, actually. I think like Monday or Tuesday. And it went to all the principals, and essentially wanting it to also be disseminated to all the staff. So we did say to the staff, our administrator said that certainly you're open to go, but we do plan on having attendance there. So we will have, district-wide, we'll have some attendance there, just taking notes and being able to offer that. That said, we don't want to deny anybody that opportunity, nor do we want to promise that everybody's going to be there either. So I'm not exactly sure. I did not I don't, Elizabeth and I, because we haven't had the opportunity to connect with Helen or Kevin, really weren't aware of that until actually we got the email. So, again, not saying anything bad about that, but we hadn't really had a chance to respond until receipt of that email.
And it looks like there are 4 more in addition. There's one on Saturday, and then there were 3 other meeting dates as well. So I think there's
Yeah.
opportunity if all of the board members wanted to go at different times, we probably could. But
Yeah, I think we'll certainly report out, again, if somebody's there, board members can also help, but we'll kind of give a little bit of assessment on what the outcome was, what they're looking for, and how we can best help. Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to number 7, public high school choice capacity.
So in your packets, it's there, it's under this is an obligation under Title 16, 822 that we have to do this. And so this is under the public school choice component. And you can read specifically, I've also attached the specific law that's cited. And we're recommending that and my recommendation is that you have the cap set at 1 for the 2018-2019 school year. Again, I don't know what questions people have specific to this recommendation or in general of the school choice capacity.
Any questions on that?
I do have it as action, it's needed
Yep.
and required.
So I'll take a motion to approve the public high school choice capacity of being 1 choice student.
So moved.
Is there a
second?
All those well, we have to do a roll because Elizabeth's on the phone. So I guess I will take the roll. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
Alex? Aye. All right. We're complying with open meeting rules.
Great, thank you, Martin.
So on to number 8, set announced tuition for fiscal year 2019.
So this is also a requirement, and we provided just a brief write-up about what again, this is in accordance with the statutory requirements, Title 16, 826. Again, we're recommending the following rates, and again, they're established based on a formula that arrives at that amount. Again, you, not too long ago, went through the reconciliation activity as well, not that long ago. So again, the recommendation and action are outlined here for secondary 7 through 12, elementary 6 through 12, and special education.
Are there any questions on this issue, or comments, or discussion? So, go ahead.
Can I,
Bridget.
yeah, I just want to clarify one last time. I'm sorry, John, I know you've spoken to this before, but I just want to clarify. On the special education rate, it says the recommended rate of $14,747 is for students who participate in the progressive program. This calculation is based on actual costs from the prior fiscal year. And I was still just confused, because I thought what we had said last time is that if students from out of district are coming and paying tuition, we're then billing more closely exact expenses back to their district as opposed to charging them a rate. So can you just clarify one last time?
Yes. There is only 1 student, I'm told, that was part of this progressive program
Okay.
last year for whom we actually billed this rate, or
Okay.
the prior year's rate. Every other every other tuition student that receives special ed services here gets billed like on an a la carte basis. He or she is not part of a regular program, but he or she receives special services like 2 hours a week of physical therapy or 6 hours a week of special speech and language therapy. And those numbers are all added up for every special education student, and they're billed the actual cost of those. So this is a very unusual situation that this rate would ever be charged. Nearly all of the special ed services are billed out as needed and as concerned.
Okay, and just to clarify, one last point on that, the ones that we bill out to the other districts, we're billing those at 100%, and then they are then, from the state, reimbursed at those different percentage
They
rates?
get the reimbursement for those, we do not.
Okay,
We're
so we
getting
bill
our
them at
reimbursement,
100% of what
yes.
we pay? Okay.
Yes, we get
Okay.
the reimbursement from the sending district.
Okay, that was my question, thank you.
So, and I assume this, it's probably obvious that this is a lot less this year, because it goes off of what our cost per pupil is.
Yeah, there's a very fairly lengthy formula we have to use, which we really, we crib a little bit because the state formula is unintelligible. But it is based on a lot of different expenditure pieces. And if your numbers of pupils goes up, absent any other changes, your rate you can charge goes down. If your budget goes down, absent any other changes, then the rate you can charge goes down. So this is a case where our budget didn't go up very much, and we have more students. So the math ends up being a little bit less than we were charging in the current year.
So, and what this means for the islands and sending districts is the fact that we have a growing school and are doing well with our budget. It's gonna help them as well, because this is money that comes right out of their budgets to us. So-
Yes, I would think they would be happy with this kind of a rate.
This is the same, I mean, just to be clear, that we don't make this up every year. It's the same calculation that we've done in the past years.
Right, right. But just the things that are going in our favor this year are going in favor of the folks who are sending
right,
us
Mark.
students, which is great. I'll take a motion to approve the tuition, the announced tuition rates for the 2019 fiscal year.
So moved?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I will do a roll call again. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Probably is more official if I said last names, but we're all
Identified,
friends
fine.
here and identified. All right, fair enough. I don't want to be messing up.
Excuse me.
All right, so we'll move on to the school board line item program budget, and we have that in front of us.
Yeah, and we need that for action too. I know we've done some sharing with you about this, so there's some adjustments in here. Minimal adjustments, on various line items. But again, your budget is being presented at 162, 144. And we've made some adjustments. Again, we still do have some things that we need to pay attention to in this year, which is the software and the equipment that we were trying to do around board documents. But you see some of the changes are representative, like that $8,000 that are out in that year. So again, we've made some adjustments to various areas, but nothing major.
So any questions or input on the budget? Elizabeth, do you have that in front of you? Do you have any questions from?
No, I didn't have any questions on it.
So we should point out that this will provide the school board members with a whopping $750 stipend per year.
That's correct.
Which might now cover childcare expenses and laundry. So that's good. That's good.
The other notable change in here is Vermont School Board's insurance, VSBA dues went up, and that's in part connected to some of the fewer number of districts in the state, and therefore they've assessed a little bit higher. So,
Yeah,
I
not
know
by
some
that
folks
much.
asked that question.
And if I'm right, that's gonna ramp up a little bit more over the next couple of
right.
years. So I will take a motion to approve the South Burlington School District budget for the school board.
Martin?
Yes,
Before we do that, can I just make a public note here?
Yes.
For people watching on TV, 2 years prior, the budget was $183,000. The year we're currently in, it's $169,000. And the year that we're about to approve is $162,000. So this has been going down every year, for the last 3 years. I
Yes,
think that's noteworthy.
absolutely.
So thanks for
Thank you.
the chance to say that.
No, thank you for pointing that out, Alex. Thank you. Did I have a second? Yeah, I had a second as well. So did I ask for a motion yet?
You started to, and then Alex had one more question. So I'll move that we approve
Thank you. Is there a
the line
second?
item board budget, yes.
I'll second that.
All right, now I will call the roll. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
And Alex?
Aye.
All right, that is approved as well.
Great, thank you.
Moving on to number 10, consider school district budget for fiscal year 2019. All right, great.
Okay, so, I mean, I think, I don't necessarily want to go through it exactly the same. We'll probably do a little shorter version here. But what I wanted to do is we'll do some highlights of the PowerPoint, same thing that we did last time. We'll go over a couple of those fairly quickly. I do, in response to the board and some of the budget advisory, although we unfortunately haven't had another chance to meet with the budget advisory, but I've had some one-off conversations around sharing of student outcomes, just, again, providing a little bit more clarity around how our students are doing. So I wanted to share that with folks. Again, we'll reshare again the FAQs. There's been no additions to the FAQs that were last sent, but we'll just flash those up there and also know that they're on the website. And then certainly like to take any questions from the board and and your choice, Martin, from the public, obviously. And then end with the budget development sheet, which is the active sheet. So if there was desired changes on top of up or down that you'd like to make considerations, then you'd have that. And be able to see the impact on the budget, on the tax rate, et cetera. So does that work?
Yeah, I think so. I think just as a precursor to that this is it's the third time that we've seen the recommendation. So if school, for those who have not been following along, if the school board is not asking a lot of questions tonight, it's because we've had more than two with the recommendation budget, but this is probably the fifth, sixth meeting that we've had on the budget. So a lot of our questions have been answered, but we encourage folks in the audience to answer or to ask questions, so.
And the other part I think is important, as in the slides, there's also, our website, we've been keeping up to date with all of the information, so people who want to go to the FAQs or they want to see the budget administrative recommendation currently in play, they can do that. So we'll go ahead and go through it. John and I, again, same, this is exactly the same. We think it's important that we keep kind of the contents of the same. If we've made changes, then we're gonna add to that. So same thing on equalized pupils. Again, we don't have what other schools are doing. We only have what we have, and we have what's statewide. So again, 2% decrease statewide on equalized, and we're 5.5%. Feel free to stop me as well anytime along. Budget initiatives, we're going to talk a little bit about what we requested last year, and then what was taken out, and what we're proposing in. So these were the initiatives. Carson, can you dim that light, this one bank maybe? Sure. Thank you. So these were the initiatives that, I'm just going to focus this a little bit. Either that or my eyesight's gone. Yeah, that's got it, thank you. Yeah, so these were I told Marcy from RE10, who does a great job for us, that I would sit down and not walk around so I could be heard. So I'll go do that. So this is just the items that we had that were up for consideration. Go ahead. And then the items also that were funded last year. Again, important to folks to say that we did have some desired outcomes, and we were able to, with our budget, move forward some things that were very important. Items that were not funded, or some items that we've also updated this. So you can see those areas, like we did add some support for HR, and then there's other things that are the status of the FY, they're not requested. And so you can see where we're at with those requests. Again, giving you a little bit of that. And then what we are proposing now within this budget. This is extremely hard to see. This now pulls in that if you go back one slide, John, I think is the 319. I'm sorry, go forward. It's not what I wanted. But in here is the recommended addition that administration has come forward. That says 0.68% increase on the total budget. We now have all of the factors included, our updated equalize. We're going to look at, you just saw where we were. We're up at 96. We now have we've had the property yield, we've got the updated CLA, and the net impact to taxpayers of the tax rate increase would be 1.74%. So a little bit more specifics on the things that we wanted, district communication coordinator, the rationale, some of the reasons why we moved from operating budget to bond, a co-teaching position at Orchard, doing things that we know are absolutely required. This is Orchard, kind of eliminating slip, trips, and falls based on a reassessment. So behavior support, that's certainly needed to support some of the challenging behaviors, and then upgrading safety and security related matters in software.
Or when
Yeah,
do you want questions?
No, I think it's fine, go ahead.
I'm just wondering why the CDC staff was not requested. That was on page 9. It was something that was originally asked into a previous, and now it says on page 9 that that's not requested. And didn't the director of the CDC retire, and is that going to be a staff?
So, you're right
That's
that
career development, right?
Yep, that's true, but also part of administrative envisioning for the future. CDC and Big Picture are working, our hope is to be more collaborative, and I'm certainly maybe Patrick, since he's with us tonight, thank you for being here, Patrick. Would you like to respond to that also?
Sure. Ms. Young is right that we have aspirations to have CDC and Big Picture collaborate more. I think they're both, it's programming that is really all about extended learning opportunities, and Big Picture is obviously, as you know, a
My
complete
son's in it,
program,
yeah.
right? Whereas CDC is more à la carte, to borrow from John Aubin. And the two have operated kind of parallel to each other. We've always kind of wanted to see more integration there, it just didn't happen. And now Christine Lundy, who used to be a Big Picture teacher advisor, has been reassigned to CDC, so the synergy there is pretty instamatic. And so,
The general student population will
yeah.
have the same support they had before the
yeah,
retirement.
absolutely.
Okay.
We hoped more, but, we didn't increase staffing to get more. And, that was a fiscally conservative move. I think, it'll be interesting to see how those programs develop. We certainly want to see more students out in the community, internships, job shadowing, et cetera. But, and I hope that really explodes even more, and then we do need to increase staffing. But at this time, we're just going to kind of watch and wait. And
Thank you,
as I said,
Patrick.
it was mostly a fiscally conservative move there.
Yeah, and I
Use it, but
And I think, I would echo that. I mean, one of the things that we were extremely mindful of is that the uncertainty of education funding in the future for the entire state, but certainly for us. When we built this budget, we were unsure of what the yield was going to be, what the CLA was going to be, what our equalize were going to be. So we recognized volatility. We were trying to be, as Patrick said, conservative. That said, I think there's many things that we would like to have considered longer range, i.e. foreign languages in the elementary. But the reality is, with the uncertainty that exists today, we're not wanting to put a lot of things in there that we don't know whether we'll be able to maintain. We think it's not good to disrupt students' lives with a program only to take it out 1 or 2 years later. So that's really the kind of the foundation of that decision.
I would just
But,
ask
yep.
for future budgets. I mean, that's such an important program for the high schoolers, so I just hope it can continue to keep it. focused.
Certainly is, but again, there's many programs that are important to the continuing, services to our students. So, moving on, nursing, again, this was bringing up full-time nursing at the Chamberlain School. Currently, they have 2.6 individuals, they overlap a day, an LPN and also an RN, and again, the LPN's been excellent, but the fact of the matter is we need a licensed nurse at each of our school location with the dispensing of medications, and there's licensing required that this doesn't work, so this actually puts a full-time nurse there. And then, as I said earlier, we have some transitions happening, and with any transition, the need to make sure that we're continuing to pass on the information and the process. So there's some transition in here for our assistant principal, Pat Phillips, who's leaving, as well as our curriculum area supervisor for guidance, Tim Wiles, retiring. So there's some money in there to continue to make sure that information moves on. These were just, again, the objectives of the budget and what we wanted to do. Again, as I said just a second ago, we want to provide students with the opportunities that are essential for them to be successful. We want to make sure that our classroom teachers are provided with instruction and professional development that's appropriate and helps them to continue to provide that vibrant education to students in the classroom. Continue to utilize an assessment, our assessment information to continue to look and continue that continuous improvement process. And then making sure we're taking care of our facilities in the most mindful way. And in this particular case, utilizing a bond, which we think is the right financial instrument that allows us to do so, which spreads the cost over a 20-year period, not putting the burden of the taxes onto the current taxpayers of this year or next year. This, again, I think is an important, I was just sharing this today with one of the news reporters trying to understand education funding. And so this, I think, provides, a good quick picture. The things that we're in control of or not, let me just start. Our revenue, obviously, is what we get from tuition and special education and transportation reimbursement, including rental of our turf field, et cetera, comes in as revenue. That's up just a little bit at 0.04. The yield, which is set by the state, we've added that over time just to be clear, is down just a bit. Common level appraisal, again, set by the state, down a little bit. Equalized pupils, again, this number's been talked about a fair amount, and for us, both our number of students, our seated student have increased slightly, as well as our equalized, and so that's the up 3.97%. And then our total budget expense that we just talked about, 0.68. I do want to make clear that if we were including some of the capital improvements, then that would have increased. All right, just to be really crystal clear. If we were in our past years including the average about $500,000 in there, obviously that would have an impact on that particular percentage. But again, we think utilizing the bond, spreading it out over 20 years, and really being able to get at some of those items, that's why the bond at $950,000 is an important component. So that ends up with a resulting tax rate of 1.74%. Recapping, 0.68 on the overall budget, tax rate increase of 174 over last year. Average condo, 231, would see a $64 increase over last year. Average home, 336, 110, would see $92 increase. And again, all of this is subject to change until the legislative session adjourns, although most often they don't make significant changes, but it needs to be so noted.
Can I just comment on that real quick? So as far as what can be changed from the legislature, it's really just the property yield. We don't see, there's already,
Right.
there could be presumably a change in how one calculates the equalized pupil. In fact, there's been a push to
Ask that
reconsider how in fact they should do that, but that's not gonna be changing for this budget.
Yeah.
The CLA is not gonna change for the budget, so it comes down to the property yield. And I think the only change we would see there, from what I'm hearing in the State House, is in a positive direction for us. A lot of people really don't like the fact that the property yield has gone down over 3%, including the administration. So, how they're gonna deal with that is a big question. Whether they can deal with that is a big question, but I don't anticipate seeing that worsening for us.
Thanks for the clarity. And I don't know how often that yield has been readjusted. And as you've said, and John Aubin noted that if it was to change, it would likely be more favorable to us
Right.
than less favorable, or however you want to interpret that. But thanks for clarifying. It's likely not all of those things on that bubble chart, the 5 circles that said set by the state, they won't all change, to Martin's point. Only the one that would change would be the yield likely. Thanks, Martin. Tax rate history, 10 years. Our tax rate, 1.81% average over the 10 years. And then on our budget, a 2.65% increase, or average. Again, this is just hard to see on the side, but basically just showing that our tax rate is relatively flat over the last 5 years. And that's kind of where we're at with that. As far as staffing and enrollment data, This just pulls in a little bit about where we are with each of the schools. Rick Marcotte, as far as staffing, recommended next year, and again, this is based on the McGibbon forecast. So that 49 is used by, is what's being used by us from McGibbon. I would say that there's an area here that's a little bit of concern currently, and that's really looking at this particular grade right here at grade 2. And in communicating, again, with our administrators, we have the right of assignment, and certainly, you know, when I populate this, obviously I have conversations with them, but as far as, you know, moving a teacher in this particular case, it's likely that Mr. Kuhn would move the teacher, the 4th teacher up here, right? So instead of having the 16 there, it would move to there. And the other component of this is that, remember, we do have money in the contingency. Although it's possible that this would be the most likely place to receive it. But it's possible that we may have other issues upon us. And you heard from Patrick, for instance, or some of you did last meeting, that there is some volatility in some of the programming. But I think at the present time, we need to let people know that we're definitely watching our numbers. We're going to try to make the most, you know, appropriate decision in a timely manner to establish those resources if needed. But we really need to look at the entire piece. In part, I'm also conscious of looking at FTE ads and how that also factors into kind of our overall run rate. So that's where we currently are. I know there's been some questions related to that.
I have a couple more on that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Gordon, go ahead.
I guess the first thing I'd like to know is how does the number 65 there for grade 2, and this would apply to any of the numbers, I just happen to be keenly interested in that one. How does that number 65 get calculated? I know the base for this year is 64, so somehow somebody's figured out that we're going to grow by 1.
Right.
Can you coach me a little on how we get there?
Yep. So we do have in the back end of this, we have a long history of trend data. For whatever reason, how students migrate from one to the next. We have certain grades that go more than others. Typically, you won't see huge variability like dropping in big numbers. I don't particularly like doing it that way. In addition, we also have this demographic report that also is available also online that gives us information about what might be happening as a result of, you know, new developments in the city, what that might bring into our population. And again, we're up total number of students, which is an anomaly across Vermont. So we're seeing more students, and so that has some factors in there. So the one additional student, again, you can see kind of how that goes, right? 49 to 52, 54 to 57. So that's some of that kind of migration data that is playing in there.
So I'm a little troubled by this one because, to be frank, and I'm getting to a question. It strikes me as a forecast of convenience. I mean, doubtless we'll be in the 60s, but if you get much north of 65, you're automatically into 4 teachers.
Yep.
It seems to me like you're hanging on by your fingernails here with trying to keep it at 65 divided by 3, which takes class size from 16, as it is now in the 1st grade, to 22, which is entirely unacceptable to a lot of people. So I'm a little worried that the way we've backed into this 65 is one where there may be a possibility that through the course of the remaining months of the spring and the summer, we find that that number is quite, even just a little bit higher would sort of tip the scale decidedly. And so I guess I'm wondering, and I'm hoping you can help me with answering this, I'm wondering why we wouldn't just stick it in the budget now and say 4 and stop messing around. Because what's likely to happen here is, oh, you'll be surprised. Not really, but you'll be surprised. And then you'll have to use this contingency budget that you have, which may or may not, sit well in terms of the quality of the teacher that we get as that 4th teacher, okay, for a variety of reasons we've seen in the past. So I'm wondering if you could just coach me on why we wouldn't just take the initiative now and say, you know what, it's almost certainly going to be 65. We have a base of 64 now. It's probably going to be north of 65. Why don't we just bite the bullet now and put 4 in the budget?
So a couple things, again, trying to be mindful of our budget, number one, and the taxpayers' commitment to education, and also trying to be, distributing our resources appropriately. And as I said, you know, Mr. Kuhn likely, based on this, would say, I'm not gonna have 4 at the 5th grade, I'm gonna move that particular teacher up to here. So we're gonna have 4 in 3rd, but we'll have 3 in 5th grade, a little bit easier given that the population developmentally to have more. That's a partial response. The second part is if we look at the other, when we average all of this in, I mean, when we look at the total aggregate of all schools, I also need to be watchful of resources and needs at the other schools. So if we just go to, John, can you click to the next school for me? Again, just highlighting sometimes the complexity in grade level. Like Chamberlain, you can see that I have, you know, here's the 2nd grade here. So I've got 2nd grade right now at 43 with 2 teachers. So you see that, you know, these are some of the dilemmas that we get into when we get into class sizes. This happens to be 43. This is where, when you have smaller numbers, it gets harder. But it's also based on kind of the resourcing and the feedback that we're getting from classroom teachers and the administration. Currently, we have a contingent teacher in the budget. And I would say I have some volatility areas, one of which I would say is certainly here, right, at 21.5. And we also, you know, we have some upper numbers there as well. If you go to Orchard, you know, certainly has a 21 in there. So again, we're trying our best to do what we would say right sizing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, when we look at overall average of if we go to this very bottom, if go back to Rick Marcotte,
Yeah.
you know, when we average them all in, again, it's not about number. I mean, these are children, so I don't really like to do the average piece, but I need to be mindful of the resources and the expenditure side. We're at 17.8, and that obviously would drop to 16.5 if I add another. So for every 16 students, I've got a teacher there. And when I look at the other schools, it starts to then, you know, creep below where the other 2 are. So
I think you're dead right that it's troubling to use averages, especially since kids at different age groups, you know, need different amounts of hands-on attention.
yeah, absolutely right.
So, since we've decided to do a little bit of comparing, would you mind just going to Orchard for a second?
Yep.
So if I look at Orchard here, and I look at the 2nd grade, and I look at, we're projecting 61, off of a base now of 69, but we're anticipating 61. We've decided to stay with 4 there, which makes the average class size just a trifle north of 15, right? So, I guess I don't understand why for the 2nd grade at Orchard School, it's pretty clear we need 4 teachers for 61 kids. But at Rick Marcotte, seem to be willing to flirt with trying to fit 65 kids into a 3-teacher model. And it's troubling to me on several levels.
Well, again,
and I don't think I'm alone. I'd just like
Yeah.
to make you aware of that.
So again, this is in part why we say that there's a contingent teacher, and initially, when I first came out, I had, you know, we fully populated with exactly the same staffing. And so part of this has been, you know, moving back. And again, I think this is important feedback for the board, because the board still has the opportunity to make some decisions, right? So that's why we're at where we're at. Certainly, numbers don't say it all. And you can have a really small class with heavy needs that require additional resources. And we've certainly seen that in the district, where we need to put additional support people in classrooms with teachers because of sometimes the behaviors. So what I'm saying is that, and sometimes there's a lot more behind the number than just the number, right? There's a lot more behind the student need. So again, I think it's important that the board is hearing you and others. And I started out by saying that there's volatility and there's areas of watch currently. But I also have I'm worried about just, you know, if I do a resource quickly in one spot, what might be popping up in different places. So anyway, let me.
So that brings me,
You've got
I
another.
guess, to a question. Given that we have areas of concern, it looks like, in all 3 of the schools, elementary schools, is one contingency teacher enough? And what would it look like for the budget if we had 2 contingency teachers? That's kind of one question. The other is, you know, this is an issue that was raised at one of the previous meetings, and it was raised in the context of it didn't seem right to have the 4 teachers in the 5th grade because of the developmental issues and such. And you did mention at that time that, you know, that the principal would potentially be moving. that. I mean,
Reallocating the resources.
Do we
yeah.
know that that is happening?
Well, again, part of that is this is a fluid conversation. Number one, you with the board and me with you and making some of the decisions. Again, this budget represents 1.74% on the tax rate. Part of it is a conservative approach on our budget. We did not go out and try to implement a whole lot of new things, even though our budget was only going up 0.68. So we've very purposely tried to be mindful of taxpayer impact, also mindful of the bond that we need to make some pretty significant upgrades, maintaining, with the understanding that within the next couple of years, we probably will be out for a larger bond to upgrade our facilities that are definitely in need, both high school, middle school, and based on our master planning and visioning, there may be other work in there.
So going to the, I guess my first, I'm sorry, I put 2 questions. I'm not supposed to do that as a lawyer. You're supposed to have 1 question to answer.
Well, I don't do well with two.
No, but you answered my most recent question. So should we consider, and this is a question for the board as well, should we even consider having a second contingent teacher? And what does that look like for the budget if we were to do that?
Well, we can certainly, when we get to the budget worksheet, we can do that. Currently, if you were to say you wanted to add the other teacher into Rick Marcotte, there would be no budgetary change. It would take the contingency dollars out, right, and it would apply it to an FTE. Our FTE chart would change, but the budget chart and the tax rate would not change. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you add if you add then a contingency teacher back in addition, then obviously that will have, the effect on what the $80,000 would be.
Or I'm saying to contingency teachers,
Yeah.
if it is fluid and if one of the teachers is gonna move from 5th grade to 2nd grade and it seems to be fine with that size in
Yeah.
grade 5. And it's just that we have, just from past experience, we've frequently come to the summer and things didn't break the way we thought
That's
they'd
right.
break, and we used our contingency teacher plus adding additional staff. And I'm just wondering if, I guess I'd like to hear the board's view on that possibility.
So once the budget's passed, we have the ability to add the contingent teacher when we see more solidified numbers are
Right.
happening. Typically, and this is the reason why I kind of got away from the contingency teacher for a while, and somebody would say not long enough, but it's not easy. As this gentleman said, it's not easy to go along, into the summer, because once we issue contracts to teachers, right, your pool begins to shrink as you go closer into the summer, right?
Right.
And then class placement, as you all know, that's an important process. Kids get their classroom teacher, that's an exciting opportunity to say, now we're gonna take 3 groups, we're gonna break them into 4. That's not always easy because there's been some friendships. So it's not easy, but on the same time, there's volatility. If the reality of our kindergarten class that we said is gonna come in at, at 70, comes in at 40, it's like, wow, how could we be so off? And in some cases, we've had that volatility.
Right.
Not so much in our 1st through 5th grade, but we've certainly had it in other grades. That's Merrick's just being really responsible.
Merrick is being helpful for us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Karsten. So, it's really up to the board, and again, you've kind of heard me speak to that, both sides. But again, I haven't talked a lot about the high school, right? We heard a little bit last meeting, or for some of you did, that, we're gonna populate sections, and we're not overstaffed in the high school right now for some of the programming. And the middle school, of course, as I've always said, and we'll see that, they function really strongly with core teachers of 8, but they're getting up there in their numbers too. So we have, maybe, I wouldn't necessarily put them all in the same watch area, but they're all kind of watch areas. I don't necessarily want to say contingent teachers should only be reserved for elementary.
But, and that just expands my concern that we don't have enough contingency in there. If we're also talking about, we end up getting more tuition students than we anticipated. I know that a couple years ago, we had to add, or maybe it was even last year, I remember, FTEs to address that.
Portions of
I
sections,
mean, are we being too conservative as far as on the contingency teacher part?
No,
was the
Cindy had a
Cindy.
question.
Because I'm a teacher at Chamberlain, so I'll say that. And so when I see, 2.7 at the second grade at Rick Marcotte and 21.7 and then 21.5, it becomes a battle between the schools, who's going to, like who can make the best presentation, who gets the most parents to show up at a school board meeting to complain, to look at the numbers and things like that. So I'm all in favor of another contingency teacher because I think it does create this unrest, knowing that there's one teacher that's going to get shared among, and so who is the most deserving group of kids to get that? Smaller class size is what it ends up coming down to. So I also think this is also one of the reasons we need to think about redistricting and doing K-3 schools and a 4-5 school or something else, because this is a annual event of the contingency teachers. So there's just a problem with this smaller schools and how it works out every year. As far as what David was saying about, kids get assigned to classroom stuff, we don't, at Chamberlain, when we do our step-up day, they come and visit all of that grade level teacher. So they don't know which teacher is actually their teacher the following year, because we have such volatility with our kids moving in. They don't need the 4th grade team or the 3rd grade team. So for example, I teach 4th grade. So last year in 4th grade, we had 46 kids. We actually had 45 kids. We had 23 each, or 24 some for part of the year, off and on. We got 6 new 5th graders, which is not typical, but so we had to have 3 classrooms, so the kindergarten moved up. So if we had split those kids and they had known their teachers and everything, it would have been harder, but we don't do that. But it did mean that we all went in June, July, or end of June, and we did the class sizes and we into 3 groups instead of 2.
Thank you, Cindy.
Monica? did you-
I was just gonna ask, and this is really too for you, Martin, because you're here and you're in Montpelier, but our numbers are going up and we have more developments coming in. We're going to have more students, and I don't know how close McGibbon gets in their projections to really knowing what kind of development's coming in. But with Cider Mill growing and the O'Brien development coming in, and on Shelburne Road, the new building coming in, I don't know what the state is going to be looking at going forward, but I really hope that they understand and that the community understands numbers are going up, their enrollment is going up.
And we're very unusual.
Yeah, I know, and that's why we need to shout that loud and clear in Montpelier, I think, because our numbers are going up.
The demographer data, I mean, there's, again, the demographer has, part of the, coming up with the number and the equation and the formula, it does take into account, and we made sure that, are you looking at all of the expected property development, right, as we look at long range, what currently, what's future, et cetera. And so that's an important component. And I would say that when actually we look back at some of the demographic data, they're not, I mean, there's some variability there, but generally in the right trajectory for us, being pretty much on. That said, I think it's easy to say, because they're building so many homes, you think that it's going to equate, to large numbers, but it doesn't always work out that way.
I know, it's not
based
large,
on.
but the numbers are going
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to just throw in that I'm mindful you have many considerations with all of this. But from the perspective of someone that's in the 1st grade right now, right, if the very next year they go from a class size of 16 to 22, right, I think that's a big ask. I think that's a big change for the child. I think it's an enormous burden on the teachers as well. So I just ask you to consider that and see what you can do. A suggestion that was made about extra contingency teachers sounds like a good one. But I'll say in as many words, I'd vastly prefer that you just bite the bullet and put a 4th teacher in there right now. Anyway, thanks.
So I guess, for purposes of looking at what that means, if we could bring up the budget.
If you want to do that.
Yeah, just the.
Well, can we just
Or do you wanna
quickly
go
go
through
through
the
this, and
rest-
then
go through
we'll
the rest of it?
we'll end
Okay.
with the
Yep.
budget development sheet. So I think you may have
Sure.
other things that you want to address, but I don't think we're far off here from ending. So this is, again, we've talked a good amount, obviously, of the 3 schools and the configurations. And again, there's a lot more behind here in staffing than just the classroom teachers. There's all of our support systems, our special educators, et cetera. Here's Tuttle, based on their enrollment, and again, where they, where they are and where we're headed. And as I said, based on their core teachers, they have 8 in every classroom, every grade level. And so when you look at that, it's always been as far as the numbers on 8 core teachers, it's always been a way in which we've been able to take in, pretty significant increases. So is that, you don't know what happened?
It's doing an auto update. So we're gonna have to wait for this to reset.
All right, no problem.
Won't take very long.
So, do people have this in their hands, actually?
Yeah, I think everybody has it in their hands.
Yeah, so perfect. So,
Just,
we're on page 26, which is the middle school, and so when you look at those numbers, again, what I said earlier around those projections, again, 23.8 average in 6th grade, in 7th and 8th, 22.9. Again, we're recommending no change, but again, I think as we see numbers creep up, this is also in part connected to our need to respond by resources. Page 27 is our high school, and again, our high school, in this particular McGibbon projection, he did not break out the total number of tuition, he just looked at migration of each of the grades. So again, pretty much flat for where we are this year to where we're going next year. Although what we see is the kind of continual uptick. And then when you look at, kind of where we are with the number of core teachers, and then you see the number of teachers, students per teacher. And again, that's part of what Patrick was talking to before. And again, they aren't all like that, because we have higher numbers in some classrooms. If you get into some of our more specialty classes, they're going to be a little bit lower. But again, that's essentially their total core teachers divided by the number of students. 28 and 29 are FTEs. And again, as the board knows, I've been working with the administration to be mindful of how we utilize our resources and best deploy them. And this particular, we're currently at 0.81 increase. And again, if the contingency teacher, for instance, went from contingency to included, you'd have to add that to that, right? So again, page 30 is just notable budget items. As a result of the healthcare plan reductions, it's $550,000 that's been recognized. Those of you who don't know, at the landfill, we have that a solar array that we now have solar or electricity credits that come in to both the city and the school. We're estimating $20,000. Working to continue to make sure our buildings have upgraded equipment around safety and security. So such things as security camera, lock, and key systems. Notable here is the $950,000, $500 on stewardship bond to pay for various capital upgrades. Nothing in here would change, add a new room or anything of that nature. It's really just upgrading the things that are absolutely in need of being upgraded, including, or in addition, I would say, or within that is also the $325,000 that would go towards the restroom facility on the Munson Field. $150,000 for the to refit the library as a result of the city library vacating, and then it keeps the capital reserve money at the same. So the budget recap, 0.68 on the, I'm going to 31 now, 0.68 budget increase, 0.04% on revenue increase, tax rate increase over the prior years, 1.74, 190 students, you see that then 64 on the average condo, 92 on the average home, and then income sensitivity declines from 2.72 to 252. And again, as Martin already indicated, the parameters specific to the property yield is likely to be the only change. Place where you can get more information. And what I wanted to do next is just go quickly to a little bit of just kind of notable things for our schools. And, we're often, I tell you, we're not often good about just thinking about a lot of the good things. We have many things that we're working on, continuous improvement, but we just wanted to share with you a few of the highlights around some of the outcomes that we have for our students. And you know what? Obviously, we've got two of our student reps that are, strong reminders of some of the great things that they're doing, but this is just a little bit of a recap of what we have going on. So at the high school, again, I think these are things that certainly people have reported to us and said, well, you really should make sure people know about this. But we're a top-ranked high school in Vermont and certainly U.S. We're ranked #1 in Vermont by niche. School currently provides, really supportive and accelerated programs. 79% of our students go on past graduation. 78 of our juniors and seniors participate in dual enrollment programs. 4 students we have attending early college programs. The 16-17 participation in athletics, which specific to athletics, you can see the numbers there, 30 in the fall, 31 in the winter, 36. Again, that's a pretty sizable number when we have, students that are actively engaged in their academic area as well as in the athletics. And then I think, this is one that I'm continue to be proud of. The 80% of the students at the high school participate in a co-curricular activity. This could be a debate, this could be, there's a myriad of things. And, not that, Patrick has always listened to the students, and in some cases, they come forward and want to start a club. Well, guess what? They start a club. Cricket is a good example. Most of you probably don't know that. There's a whole bunch of different clubs that start up that are part of that. And 103 students participate in the annual career job fair, 125 Coalition Community Service, 77 were inducted National Honor Society. Vermont Agency of Education, 93.36 on graduation. SBAC and NECAP results rank highest in the state. 80 students enrolled in the,
Can you explain that graduation rate is a 4-year graduation rate?
Yep.
We graduate more than that, but it's sometimes.
we do,
takes
and
more than
Patrick
4
would tell you, I'll let Patrick, go ahead and talk about that one, Patrick.
I mean, yeah, Martin's right, that's the cohort graduation rate, so those are the students who start. So for example, a number of students, if you're on an IEP, you're eligible, we provide educational services until your 21st birthday, so you actually don't, you don't graduate, so you don't count.
Within that cohort.
I guess if you were to say you count against us, you know what I mean, they're not in the 93%. And there's a number of other scenarios, as well as students who graduate early, they don't necessarily help us either. But I think the important thing when you get to that number, and this is something that I'd be willing to do for the board, I can tell you the story behind every single student that's not in that 93.36%. You know what I mean? And I think that's the important thing. Still with us,
Working towards it.
homeless and run away. I mean, they're not all great stories, but I can tell you the story of every individual student that's,
It's in a way
that comprises that less than 7% of not graduating with their cohort.
In a way, it's too bad that it doesn't extend to like a 5th or 6th year, because where you can see, students that start but, have a different pathway, right? And then.
Yeah, we have quite a few that graduate at, within the 6th year, certainly within a 6-year range. We have quite a few. And like I said, because it's such a small number, we keep track of those students. So if a student does withdraw from school, we literally will call them up over the summer and be like, okay, what's going on? Where are you living? Do you have 6 credits left? Let's go. Come on back in here. You can do 2 online, 1 at night. You know what I mean? Let's get this done. So I think that's the benefit of having it, be less than 7%. That's the benefit of it being a small number. At larger urban high schools where they have 30-40% non-completion rates, they can't get down to the individual kid like we can.
So just finishing, thank you, Patrick, just finishing this up again, SBAC and NECAP are state level assessments and national level assessments where we rank. 80 students enrolled in virtualized learning, 485 on AP courses, a variety, 112 enrolled in calculus, 147 in college level math. So again, that's just a quick little snapshot, and sometimes I don't feel like we really do that justice, and or it's kind of bragging. Again, on the back end of this, administratively, we're working on a lot of things, to try to make sure that our students are getting all that they need to be able to make that next step. So at Tuttle, again, similarly, ranked number 1 out of 96 schools in Vermont as far as teachers, second out of the 97 under best public schools, middle schools. Robust academic program here as well. Again, SBAC and NECAP, among the highest in the state. Extensive visual performing arts. Again, I think, great, as Martin said earlier, if you had an opportunity to go to the play, you're not, we're seeing a very, an outstanding performance. Our music that matriculates all the way through the program is certainly very notable, et cetera. So again, those are both first and second bullets that are pretty significant. And then the participation in athletics is also there pretty extensively. Next, participation in the co-curricular, again, similar to what we talked about at the high school. Spelling bee, again, we've had some, both groups of students and individuals that have gone on to be really significant and notable, from the spelling bee to the GOB, and the number of students that have currently actually, which is new and continuing to the personalized learning plans that matriculates into the high school. And so we've, again, Karsten and his staff have come through 100% of their students participating in student-led conferences. I think last year was the first year, is that right?
It was the first year and
Yeah.
was part of the PLP process. And then, of course, we continue on with the Tarrant partnership this year where, we're doing a lot of work in that area.
Thank you,
Can I
Karsten.
just make a quick comment on that, because I have a 6th grader, and I just want you all to know, I was blown away at her conference, because she ran it, and she was so confident, and she was basically telling her teachers, and having 2 older kids, I think they could have really benefited from that, so that format was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, this is just a little recap on our elementaries. Again, we have 3 elementary schools, but we're certainly ranked in the top 12 Vermont schools extensively in literacy, math, writing, and sciences. And we have literacy and math coaches, which is different than most. And again, that's really to help classroom teachers make sure they're delivering the content in the most appropriate way with the best skills. So it's working with them, and that's been a really positive addition that this budget has, our budgets over the time have allowed. And then again, the same thing with our arts and also our other programs, including media. Mindfulness activities and farm-to-school lessons, again, in support of our community, we've had devices that get into the hands of our young students and can be utilized as resources. You've seen some coding activities happen at different schools, such as, I think we had a board meeting at Chamberlain, and you saw some of that activity. After-school activities, again, we're one of the few schools, I think, as I note in the very bottom, we have 412 students in our after-school programs, and the after-school programs allow kids to, kind of settle down, but then pull in some academic and collaborative learning, and we do that throughout the summer, and that has been just a huge program for us as well, and parents, obviously. Exceptional relations with our PTOs, again, a lot of support comes out of our PTOs, both in support and also some financial opportunities. Our preschool has been a huge addition, not only in our schools, but also in the transitions into kindergarten. So actually, the work that Delina took on, I don't know how many years ago now, but it was solely hers. It's grown to, have over 300 students that pre-Ks that we watch. But that program has been instrumental in readying our kids to come into kindergarten much more ready and able to be in a positive place. So that preschool program is something we're certainly proud of as well. And then the balanced class sizes, although we're talking directly on that one in just a little bit more, but trying to keep those class sizes in reasonable numbers and not up where we know a lot of other either Vermont schools or schools in the country are way up there, make it really challenging to provide the type of education that we want. So that's a little bit of that. The other part that I wanted to note before we go to the budget development sheet is the FAQs. that we previously had, we've had those, and I would encourage anyone to go there. John's done a nice job to explain ADM and equalized pupil and how all that works out in the budget, as well as any other questions. We're gonna continue to add, when we have a question either from the board, we continue to respond to that. And so we wanna make sure people go to that for other information. So without,
Just a couple points,
Yep.
if I can, before we jump into that. First of all that great information about how well the schools are doing, if we can package that up and send it to Jerry Silverstein, that'd be, and I'm serious, we should send it along to him if we have his address. Because that was one of his big questions at the last meeting.
to share it. with
Yeah,
people.
to share with him.
Yep, good point.
The other is, I still would like to see what our projected staffing ratios are for given our projected students for next year and the FTEs.
Yep.
And I noticed that we don't have that yet.
Well, we
and
don't, because we can't, like, the average comparisons in the statewide data off of the, can I point people to the page here on
It's
that?
point 57, page 57.
Yeah, so
58.
57 in the packet is what Martin's referring to. And this data is based on FY16, which is what's collected. I think what we were trying to do, and let me just try to find that page. Bear with me just a second. You know what page, John, where we actually showed the numbers. I know it wasn't a presentation slide. Well, what we tried to do is just give you the total number of students and then allow you to do it in the FTE breakdown. But, well, I'm not finding it, so I hear what you're saying, Martin. So,
It's only a budget Q&A page right here that's.
oh, great.
We have given the staffing numbers for last year and this year, and here we give the enrollment numbers for this year and next year, and, we haven't tried to mix and match all of that, but you can just take any one of those and divide it by that.
Yeah, so Martin, your desire would be that page 57, or for that matter, 58 or 59. You'd like to see that, but the problem that we have is we don't have any data from the state.
No, I just wanted an asterisk which would show us down here that we
What's
project
happening.
that it's good. So actually, what would really be nice, but we're not gonna get it in time for a vote, and I don't think it makes a difference on the voting for the budget, is actually seeing the trend. I mean, this is interesting information to compare what we're doing in the state and such, but I'd like to see how we've been doing the last 5 years and what our trend is, and that's something we should be keeping track of. And I'd like to understand but more importantly, I would like to understand what our projected FTEs and divide it up in whatever manner, what that's gonna mean for the coming year in our ratios. Without comparing it to the state, it's more comparing to where we've been in the past.
Yeah, so the FTE sheet that was in here, which is on 19 and 20, or 28 and 29, the idea would be we're at 492.21.
Right. So
Divided by that total gross number, the total number of students would give you the, kind of that.
that's the staff, that would be total staff.
That'd be
right?
total staff, and then we can do it by teacher. So certainly happy to do that, and I think if you want, we can add it to the FAQs,
I
or
think
even do
I
a
think
graph
it's
attachment.
It's potentially helpful,
Yeah.
yeah.
The reason I didn't do it is because when you look at the graph, I didn't want to have 2016 data showing our data.
Right.
That could be deceiving to people around, why would you be using?
No, I
some of that
understand,
data.
yeah, I understand that.
Thanks, John, for finding that.
Can I just ask on page 57 too,
Cindy?
where you have that list of all the breakdowns? That also includes like guidance and nurses and everything, right? And it would be great to add that in because it says K-12 teaching staff, but then you delineate the special educators, and I don't think everybody realizes when they look at the number that it really does include guidance, nurses, anybody with a teaching license. So to just add those, if you're gonna break some of them down, it would be great to show all of the categories that are included.
No, I think, yeah, we should change that slide if this is gonna be part of
Well,
the
again,
presentation.
we say include all certified staff, and the only thing it excludes is preschool teachers.
But I don't know that anybody
Would key on
would
that.
understand that nurses and guidance
So to be,
people are,
yeah,
I'd include those. in
all
the list.
certified, yep, you got it. Okay, so why don't we go back to we'll go to the budget development work. Again, two things, questions from the board, but we thought also we would end with the budget development workshop sheet that allows you to see,
Yeah,
and make any changes if you so desire.
I guess just to start, I just would like to see what it would look like to the numbers if we added what we normally add for one position. We could talk about whether it should be contingency or not,
Yeah.
but just to see
So
what
it would be another
what it
80.
looks like.
So John's he'll pull up the workshop sheet and he'll just add in the
So
assumed
how this
additions.
works is, we've got the current budget at 49,606,166, the presented budget. We got the offsetting revenues, we've got the equalized pupils, the property yield, and the tax rate parameters here. So what we're gonna do is just add, we typically assume about $80,000 for a new teacher. And if we put 80,000,
What's in the contingency right now? You said there was money there, but.
80.
The full 80 is in there?
80.
Wow.
It's likely that won't do that again, but when we add all of the, the resources to support, that's more than enough, probably. We probably could move that down a little bit. That's the number we've used.
Can you go down a little bit so we see what it does to the tax rate as well?
well, that's,
Well, I can't, I
the
couldn't see it
homestead
from-
tax rate increases from 1.74% to 1.96%. The increase in the budget goes from 0.68% to 0.85%.
Okay. All right, no, that's the information. Now, I'd like to just understand from the rest of the board where you all are on that. So Elizabeth, I don't know if you heard what that change did to the numbers. Did you hear?
Can you give me the tax rate on that? I didn't quite hear
Yeah.
that.
1.96%.
1.96% would be the tax rate increase, assuming that the
80,000
yield
addition.
stays the
Stays,
same as
yeah.
it is.
Yeah, if I can just make a quick comment, and again, I apologize for being on the phone here, but it's actually, the reception's very good on my end, so I'm hearing most everything. One of the ongoing concerns that I've had over several budget cycles is kind of the creep, the consistent creep in FTEs across the district. When student enrollment has been either flat or slightly up or slightly down. I know this year is a unique phenomenon with equalized pupils. I also think we've always had, certainly most recently, a pretty robust discussion about the number of tuition students we have and the dependence on both the positive and potentially, not necessarily negative, but the concerns about the revenue associated with the percentage of students coming largely to the high school that are tuition students. Again, I think the argument for the notion of contingency is smart. I think they've been effectively utilized. I guess I would just make the observation, I've never seen them not utilized. And once they're in the run rate, I have also never seen them leave the run rate. So I just, would cautiously say we struggle with that ongoing balance of staffing to student enrollment and then specific class size issues where there is pressure and there certainly is research that supports certain class sizes and the learning environment. So I'll stop there.
And I just want to clarify that, as I understand it, we have one fewer teacher at Rick Marcotte, at least, projected for the coming year.
I think what
For what
Elizabeth
it's
is
worth.
referring to is, it wasn't that long ago that we went from the 19 to the 20, and now, and this one proposes going back down to 19.
Right.
I think her point being is, once we put something in it, is it coming out? And my response would be is, to the total FTE to run the district, even though enrollment has gone up. You know, we've been able to hold on the FTEs to be a 0.81 increase. So there's been some other reductions in there. Again, albeit not necessarily classroom teachers, but there's been other staffing associated as administration and myself are trying to be mindful about the resources, particularly given the volatility of education funding. I don't, again, the worry for us, at least out of the gate initially, was what's gonna come next year, you know? And that's a real concern of ours around a district that we'd say is growing, but if parameters get put on us, that's gonna make our tax rate go up, you know, into the double digit. Well, that's not gonna be advantageous for our community and certainly for our students. So how are we trying to balance those long-term needs as they figure out education funding?
And the board members want to pipe in on this? Bridget?
Yeah, I'll begin. Elizabeth and I had a conversation before the board meeting, because I did not have good reception last time, and this was part of that discussion that we started to broach about trade-offs that we're making. So when we saw that we had an equalized pupil number that was higher than we expected, we chose which initiatives we were adding in, and I had expressed some concern about whether we had enough contingency in the budget. And I have to say, I'm on the fence about whether one contingent teacher is really enough. Just given that, you know, I've been on the board for 2 years now, plus the year before I came on the board, I watched us add another fourth grade teacher after the school year had started, and we did that again this year. And we've used the contingency teachers we've had in the past. I do think that I'm coming down on this. I would feel more comfortable if we had the contingent teacher that's already at Rick Marcotte, plus we had one more that was kind of unassigned at this point, in case we see enrollment start to shift, because I just think it's too early right now to really know how enrollment's really gonna play out.
I mean, even if there was no change in enrollment, I guess I'd just like to point out that if the number of
First graders now goes from, 64 as it is now, that group of first graders, and next year they're gonna be 65. You can't even think of that as the 64 that you have now plus one extra student, which means somebody thought it was a really good idea to shoehorn the same 65 kids into a 3-teacher model instead of the 4-teacher model that they work in now. So maybe the answer lies also not just in adding additional contingency, but maybe it also has to do with some hardwiring now with respect to which teachers are assigned to, how many teachers, I should say, are assigned to each grade within, well, certainly within Rick Marcotte, but this would apply to any school. And maybe some of those determinations could be made sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and just, the board, there's a lot that goes into deciding where, you know, the principal wants to put their teachers, and it isn't just class size. I know it's been mentioned before. It's really what the cohort is made up of and what the needs are, et cetera. And just from the board level, we really defer to those judgments that the administration makes. You know, it's not for us to manage at that micro level. Having said that, we do have a policy, and we have traditionally, you know, raised flags, particularly in kindergarten through second grade, if we see class sizes going over 20. And we really want to be assured that, because that, you know, it's still within policy, but it's at the top edge of really where policy is, just so you know. But in any event, any other board discussion at this point?
I'd be amenable to erring on the side of caution and budgeting for another contingent.
Alex, do you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad we're hearing from people from the public. A week ago, I heard from another member of the public who was critical of the budget and saying that it was too high. So I think I kind of view my job here as getting a budget that gets the job done but is also passable. And that is a balancing act that we sort of have to, you know, judge what the voters are interested in doing. And so having this one contingent teacher in here, and I'm sort of imagining the scenario where if we don't add another contingent teacher and we end up with the same situation we ended up with in September, October, and we find out that that one contingent teacher wasn't enough, what can we do to the budget if, we find ourselves in kind of an, I wouldn't call it an emergency situation, but it's a scramble situation where we have to come up with a solution fast because we've got an overcrowded class in one of the elementary schools or something like that. What could we do, David, if we found ourselves in that situation where we didn't add another contingency teacher to this budget that we sent to the voters tonight? What could we do?
Well, again, part of my obligation is to work with John and say, where could we come up with the resources? But know that, even though we're a $49 million budget,
Yeah.
There's not an awful lot of room sometimes. And so
No.
we have dedicated, dollars, but we would have to figure out what we could, again, either reschedule, delay, or do differently. And again, I don't want you to think that we run our budgets to plan to come right to zero. We do have to have some contingency in our budgeting.
Yeah.
But just like I'm doing with you, is that we've not been in a situation where we've had to go out and ask for like 3 more teachers on a year or resources. For a good-sized district, we've been fairly close. We've had to use the contingent teacher, but we've also had volatility. If you look back a few years ago, we expected large numbers coming into Rick Marcotte K 2 years ago, but what actually came in was 40, right? So the volatility sometimes is in part what, we try to make some decisions on. So we could go out and find and figure out how to do that. But if that happens, like the high school needs, 5 more sections, and then, we've got elementary. So I want to be careful about just saying, a couple of months I can find the money. Good budgeting is good budgeting, and that's what we've done. And again, if it's your desire to put a little bit of some additional assurance, understand.
So I would go to I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I guess, John, where else is there contingency built in the budget? Because I know last year when we had the initiative worksheet, there was an $80,000 contingency teacher, plus there was another $80,000 that was in there in contingency that may have come out in the later rounds of the budget as we tried to get it passed. But I just want to understand where else in the budget is there any flexibility?
We actually explicitly list the contingency and line item budget, and I don't know if I have it here.
Yeah.
It's on the questions.
I think it's
That's
on
in
the
FAQs,
questions. I think it's on that other document. We can maybe go to some course and guidance.
Right here.
It's
It's
more
actually
than just
FAQs.
contingent teachers.
FAQs and other costs and contingency, right, John? On the FAQ page, page 4.
Yeah, I guess it is. If anyone has access to the line item budget, you'll see it. If I can stop it from jumping around. In total, we have what listed, $127,500 worth of contingency. That is reduced. We had the similar number in the current year is $396,429 and $510,827 in the FY17 budget. But there's an unspecified contingency of $60,000. Oh boy, it's pretty slim, really. And the staffing contingency is built directly into the staffing budget. But the total, what you see as other costs and contingencies, $127,000.
In other areas that, again, when we have teacher retirements or staff retirements, often the transition and new staff coming on board, we've recognized this in our budget that we expect kind of a run rate of retired teachers, and we capture some of that potential cost savings. Obviously, when we exceed that number, and sometimes that happens, then obviously that would be also built into, opportunities where, as a result of opening the school year and knowing what we know, we have X amount of additional dollars. But a lot can happen still within a district this size.
Could you put the worksheet
So-
back on? The worksheet. So, I guess a couple items. First of all, Alex, I want to understand what the voters want, obviously. We need to get a budget passed, and we want the voters to pass the budget, and that's certainly what happens in March. But I feel what we need to try to do is certainly come up with, the best budget that we can that is conservative, but is fulfilling all the programming needs. And certainly one of those areas is making sure that we got it covered if we have volatility with students in the elementary school. Given our history, that always seems to be a case. But the other thing is that, I just would look at the numbers here. And with this change, we're still at under 1% on the budget growth, or we're under 2% on the tax. And importantly, the reason why it's a 2% tax is, we have, this is a very important number for us not to lose track of. Our cost per pupil is going down 2.75%. When that is happening, generally speaking, we would expect that our taxes would be going down, but it's because of the what's the percentage of 3%, 3.13 decrease in the property yield. That's why, we end up with that tax. Usually a budget of 1%, when we're really, the whole thing is run on a cost per pupil basis, we would be seeing just, if everything else was even, great news on it. But nevertheless, I would say we're still at least within my parameters, or the parameters that Steve was helpful in providing back in December when we said we didn't want to go, if we could, not over 2% on the tax rate increase. So, I think, I would be in favor of this concept as well, to be, But having said that, I suppose at this point, unless Elizabeth or anybody else wants to weigh in, I'll take a motion on whether we should add that. Should I have a motion on that, or do we want to just put it in
I would.
and
I
have a
think-
motion for the whole budget, or do we want to talk more
I think you should get a motion just to make sure everybody's, on the same page and.
on this
On this
particular issue?
addition, yeah.
I would take a motion to add one contingency teacher, which means increasing the budget by $80,000.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I will have to take a roll again. Steve?
Can I make a
Yes,
quick?
oh, yes, a discussion or question, sure.
Yeah, on one hand, I think you or someone already mentioned this, but the current budget is the administrative recommendation, and that is consistent with board policy in terms of how we've been reviewing this budget and other typical actions that we've taken. So I would say that the budget with one contingency teacher is consistent with the superintendent and the administrative recommendation. On the other hand, I think I pointed this out last week, but this is the first time in a couple budget cycles that we would have had staffing at the aggregate district level going up 0.16%, while equalized pupils were going up 3.98%. So that is a reduced trend in terms of staffing versus pupils or equalized pupils. So if we ended up utilizing two contingency teachers, the staffing would go from that 0.16% to 0.57%. So up about 0.4% on that close to 4% increase in equalized pupils. So in fairness, the ratio is still relatively good compared to past situations we've been in.
Yeah, thank you. All right, any other discussion, questions? I'll call the roll. Steve? Oh, I'm sorry, Alex.
Make a comment that this is a pretty unusual situation that any district in Vermont has had with a growing school district. And, you know, I read the articles about education and I read the news, but I don't recall anything like this. I mean, you'd probably have to go back to the 1960s when all the baby boomers were heading into the schools to have or to find conversations like this.
It is rare,
Yeah.
definitely. Let's hope it continues.
May I ask one more question?
Please, absolutely.
David, why did you think we could get by with such slim margins? Or were you just trying to reach a goal, or please, can you tell me more about it, please?
No, I think, we're trying to really be mindful of the cost. When we put the budget together initially, we had uncertainties around the state factors. So we built, we constructed this budget based on what we felt was going to be the ability to continue to provide, appropriate programming for our students, K through 12. We did put in, again, I had in this budget initially no contingent teacher with classroom teachers all up where we are currently. But then I thought also that, given the volatility of that, particularly with some of the past data that we've had this particular year, that it made sense to put it back into contingency.
Just one.
Just one. Again, if we ran the district with, all kinds of concerns, I probably would worry myself sick and put all kinds of money in there that I'm worried about this, not happening or this happening. And so, I think it's pretty consistent with our run rate over time. And we're gonna get into talking about the bond in just a minute. But I'm also wanting to be sensitive to the community of South Burlington that I think next year, or next year, not this March, but the following March, I think we'll probably have some pretty significant needs that will unfold for bonding for the middle school and the high school. I think it's gonna be pretty significant. So with that in mind, we've tried to be mindful about don't do much to the high school, waiting for our bigger picture, as well as for the middle school. And then I think not too far to the future, we're gonna make some decisions out of master planning, which may result in, some significant bonding that might need to take place to continue our education for our elementary students. So all that said, is kind of wrapped into being mindful of today and tomorrow, still having contingency, and being able to provide the types of programming that we need, but also look to the future. So that was really the kind of the mindset for us. And again, I'd love to add a whole lot of additional pieces. You've heard me talk about, instrumental music, and you've heard string music, and you've heard me talk about foreign languages that can matriculate from elementary up to the high school. We've had that in front of folks. We've had a variety of things there, but again, those didn't reach, the right time and right place for us to do that at the current time. So, short answer is, I think there was money built in there, but albeit risky.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to increase it to be a huge, large pool either.
I think we're trying to be a little bit more conservative on that, given our past history as well.
That's
So,
great.
Okay, now any questions, discussion? I'll call the roll. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Nay?
Was that a nay?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I heard. Bridget?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Okay. I don't have to vote. All right, we'll move on to the
Thank you.
next item, which is the, oh, right, yeah, there we go.
Minor detail.
Any other questions, inputs on the budget itself?
You're on that line item, yep.
Yeah, I was trying to jump ahead, wasn't I?
You're fine. So the line item budget that you need to approve with that addition, obviously, is what John has just put up on that will then need to be part of the warning,
So we'll
which
need
is
to
the 49
Update the morning, right?
68166. Martin,
Right.
686.
what did I say? Did I get that wrong?
Just
68.
496.
49666.
166.
Yeah.
166. Okay.
So that would be up for the,
All right, are there additional questions, should I go ahead and take a motion, and then if there's any additional discussion, let's do it that way, just to move it along. I take a motion to approve, are we approving the warning or just the number right now?
You need to approve the item.
Okay, just-
The line item budget.
Okay, the
Yeah.
line item budget, for the amount of $49,686,166 for fiscal year 2019.
So moved?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Just a quick comment, Martin. This is a little bit of a dilemma because I did not vote for the specific line item adjustment. But my observation would be, I believe we can address any enrollment issues that may come up within the prior administrative approved budget. But I'll just offer that before you take a call.
Okay, I guess I'm not sure I,
She's simply,
Right.
I mean, if I can re-clarify, Elizabeth is saying that within what was recommended by the administration, she's simply saying that there's money available, if need be, to add a second contingent teacher. I think, is that right, Elizabeth?
Well, I believe we can address any enrollment
Address it.
issues that might come up with the prior, but what I'm really saying is I'm getting a little conflicted because I did not support a line item adjustment, so we have the entire budget going to vote right now. So I just want to make sure that that is noted from my standpoint.
right, yes, understood. Is there more that can be done for you to be able to support this budget as it is?
I am not saying I'm not going to
Yeah.
support
Okay,
it.
all right,
She's
all
not ready
right,
yet.
well, yeah, but,
She's just making a point.
fair, that's fair enough. All right, I'll take the roll. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
All right, good, it passes.
Great.
Sorry for the confusion.
Nope, it's fine.
Now we get to move on to number 11, consider bond borrowing for capital projects.
Yep. So this is in your,
Are you gonna get a
this
new
is in your packet. And the capital improvement bond issue, Article 3. I got it here for you.
We can take a break at the end for you to.
To do make the change.
Yeah, to do a
She's got to
change.
make the change on the item 2. Right, this is what we're in right now.
Okay, right, yeah.
So
Okay,
just,
sorry.
so again, just to recap on the bond, it's the 900 and, it's 950,500. And the focus, remember, is on upgrades to the athletic facility at Munson for 375. The high school library to purchase new, new furnishings necessary to, as a result of the city vacating that space for 150. Some small security and safety upgrades, some ongoing stewardship to all 5 schools, including roof repairs at Orchard and Rick Marcotte and Central School, fire alarm upgrades, some new flooring according to the plan to reduce the trip and hazards resulted in worn carpet, et cetera. Some new lighting, and that amount for the 425. So all those together bring you up to the 950,500. We do not have to, again, based on advisement from our attorney around the bond language, we did not have to list all of those individually. We initially thought we had to, but the bond language that you see here has been vetted by our attorney. And so it is what it is. I think, Martin, it might be good to maybe just read the article at some point, so people,
So this is the Article 3?
Article 3.
Are we voting on that on number 11 or number 12?
so
Isn't that part of the warning?
this would be the bond borrowing and capital, you're on 11, bond borrowing and capital projects.
And that would be the
That's correct.
resolution?
That's
right.
the resolution.
Right,
And
so
then-
when we get to number
Yep,
12, I'll
then-
read what the warning is.
That's right.
Okay, so, just, real quick to reiterate, and I guess David could do this, but I'll just jump in there real quick, is that the reason why we've chosen to put a number of items in a bond that sometimes in the past we have put into operational budget is, in fact, probably in the past, we probably should have put some things into bonding, because a big part of it is the intergenerational equity, that with a bond, we're having somebody, pay for the facilities that we're building, such as the bathrooms in the field, which this bond would provide for, into the future as people are using it, as opposed to somebody right now paying for something that people will be using for years and years. Another good reason to be going to a bond at this point is, in fact, that the interest rate is very low. And a third reason why we think it's a good idea is that our overall, what is it called, debt that we're carrying on our books.
Bonded debt.
Bonded debt is very low relative to all, to pretty common in Chittenden County, I think is where we mainly looked at. And we do have room to carry a little more bonded debt. So I don't know if I missed anything, but I just wanted to run through our rationales one more time that we've
Excellent.
done. So I will take a motion, then we can do discussion if there is discussion on it afterwards. A motion to, what would be to approve the resolution of necessity regarding capital improvements to the constituent schools, thank you, and facilities of South Burlington School District in the amount of $950,500. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion or questions on that? Dan? Dan in the audience, I'm gonna have to
My
now get to
question
Elizabeth.
relates to what happens if the bond ballot item should not pass? Is it then fall into the same category as the budget, where the charter requires continued pursuit of getting it passed?
My understanding is that that's not the case, and that,
So it's up or down?
right, and what we've talked about
Right.
before is that we wouldn't be building the facilities on the field, the bathroom facilities, which is about $350,000. And we have $300,000 in contingency, so there's a little bit more that would have to be made up.
Right.
I'm giving David's voice
No.
a break, I apologize.
Fine.
That's
Wasn't, it's not,
And so would that proposal then come back to the board for a decision as to how to spend that 300,000?
the 300,000 in capital reserve fund,
Yes.
we would, I think, again, I don't know hypothetically where we would be. It would be, I think there would be too early, I think, to deploy that amount of money. It's in there for a contingency. It's not a lot, and so part of the reason keeping it
No,
at
it certainly doesn't cover the 900,000.
It doesn't, and what we would likely then do is reevaluate the items that are listed, and we would appropriately triage those that would be the most critical. And again, I'm just gonna pick on, slip strips and falls, tile and carpet that needed to be replaced, and the roof that was most in need, and we would probably do that, and then we would hold. Again, I'm speculating a little bit, but that's about where we would be based on if the bond did not pass. Or what we would do in the event that those items wouldn't be done, what we would do. Because again, you could go back out and re-request, or a variety of things.
So Elizabeth, did you have a comment or question?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay,
Thanks.
I thought I'd heard you. Any other discussion or
Just out of
questions?
curiosity,
Anybody?
so is this gonna be through the municipal bond bank, or is it a private loan?
So this is through the municipal bond bank, that's who we go through.
Not seeing any other questions, I'll call the roll. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
All right.
Great, thank you.
All right, now, we get to the annual school district meeting warning. So is this the one that I read?
I think
Is
you
that
should
the
read it,
concept?
typically in the past, we've read it.
Yeah, I think
Sorry.
that's, yeah.
Yeah,
Just,
and you've got the right number, you got the, yeah.
yep, I have the right number there. All right, so this is warning City of South Burlington School District 2018 annual meeting. The legal voters of the City of South Burlington School District are hereby notified and warned to meet at their respective polling places at the Frederick H. Tuttle Middle School on Dorset Street, the Orchard School on Baldwin Avenue, and the Chamberlain School on White Street on Tuesday, March 6th, 2018, at 7 o'clock in the morning, at which time the polls will open, until 7 o'clock in the evening, at which time the polls will close, to vote by Australian ballot on the following articles. Article 1, election of officers, to elect 2 directors to the South Burlington School District's Board of School Directors, 1 director for a 3-year term and 1 director for a 2-year term as required by law. Article 2, budget. Shall the voters of the City of South Burlington School District approve the school board to expend $49,686,166, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $14,977.68 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 2.75% lower than spending for the current year. Do we have all those
Yep,
numbers?
all new.
Is that all? Yep. All right, good. I'll read this. All right, Article 3, capital improvement bond issue. The City of South Burlington School District Board of School Directors has determined that public interest or necessity demand incurring bonded indebtedness to finance capital improvements, renovations, and additions to the schools and facilities of the South Burlington School District at an estimated total project cost of $950,500. Let's say that again, $950,500. It is $0.01. It is expected that 0% of the project costs will be eligible for state school construction aid because there is presently a moratorium on state school construction aid funding. Therefore, the South Burlington School District will be responsible for 100% of the project costs, $950,500, which the board recommends be funded through the issuance of up to $950,500 of general obligation bonds. Shall general obligation bonds of the South Burlington School District in an amount not to exceed $950,500 be issued for the purpose of financing the final design, permitting, site work, and the construction of renovations, capital improvements, and additions to the schools and facilities of the South Burlington School District, together with related eligible project expenses. State funds are not available at this time, or this project is not eligible to receive state school construction aid. Isn't that redundant? The South Burlington School District will be responsible for all costs of any borrowing and the cost of the planned improvements and additions. Polling places are the Frederick H. Tuttle Middle School at, am I supposed to yell because it's all caps?
No, please don't.
All right. Polling places are the Frederick H. Tuttle Middle School at 500 Dorset Street, the Orchard School at 2 Baldwin Avenue, and the Chamberlain School at 262 White Street. Voters are to go to the polling place in their respective district. The legal voters of the City of South Burlington School District are further warned and notified that a public information meeting will be held for the purpose of explaining the proposed school building improvements and the financing thereof on Monday, March 5, 2018, at Frederick H. Tuttle Middle School cafeteria at 7 p.m. The legal voters of the City of South Burlington School District are further notified that voter qualification, registration, and absentee voting relative to said annual meeting shall be as provided in Chapters 43, 51, and 55 of Title 17, Vermont Statutes Annotated. Dated at South Burlington, Vermont, this 17th day of January 2018. That's the
Thank you,
toughest thing
Martin.
I've had to do as a board member. All right, I'll take a motion to approve that warning.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right. Discussion or questions? I will call the roll. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Excellent, that is approved, and we'll all have to sign that, among other things. I think that's
Thank you.
almost all the things to. All right.
Good job, Martin.
Budget communication plan. Discussion.
So you have the same, again, Delina, thanks for putting this together. You have both January and February, and a little bit on the back for March, some of the dates that you just talked about. budget communication opportunities. So, in addition, you also have the attached, which we're currently working on. We'll be updating the data on this large one. We think this format actually works pretty good, so we'll be in the process. If you have different ideas on this, that we'll begin to populate it with kind of the updated information, unless people would like to see something different. But this has kind of been refined over the years, some by you all.
I think
by
people are
others.
used to seeing it this way.
Yeah.
We just have to make sure.
So unless we hear something different, we'll work to update this for you. But highlighting, obviously, we're moving along in January, but you see some of the different presentations that are happening at the different schools.
I just want to clarify, on February 7th, is that school board meeting at Rick Marcotte, Ashley?
February 7th, which is actually in your packet here,
I've seen it in different places, yeah, okay.
it's at Rick Marcotte, right?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to make sure. So I don't know, again, same thing I said last time, if there's other things that you'd like to have us include. Again, this is not, we're in the present time of really populating it. There's other folks that might say, hey, can you come here, can you talk to us? Or you may have requests from people that would like more information. Let us know, we can figure out how to do it. I think also, like PTO presentations, you know, I'm planning on doing these. If in fact you'd like to join, then, you know, just let me know. And happy to have any of you come along. We do have to be careful that, you know, you all don't show up on the same date. But I'm happy to have you do that.
Chamberlain there, is the president not getting back to people, or
What's that?
is the president,
I'm not-
the PTO not getting back to you?
I'm not
or-
going there.
Oh.
No, I don't think that's the case. No,
President's doing a fine job.
That's right.
She's doing an amazing job, yeah.
I'd like to go to Orchard, but I'm out of town, so I'm not gonna go.
no problem.
Actually, I might be in town early enough.
The RETN happens on February 8th, day after our school board meeting.
Do you have that covered, Elizabeth, the February 8th?
Yes, I should be fine for that. And I know we've had some discussion about including one or more of our student representatives as well.
Excellent.
Is
I
that-
was gonna turn to them and ask what other ideas they had, because they were gonna think a bit about how to get the word out. If you have any input on that.
We had mentioned last meeting an idea of using social media, so I still don't know if the old, or the Facebook page you mentioned is still active, if it would be helpful to read something about that, but mainly we're talking about representing the outcomes and communicating those outcomes to the public, kind of having it be our responsibility in some way to communicate those. That'd be something to look into.
Yeah, because like we're not experts on the numbers, obviously, so I think that sheet you gave us, since we really do want to kind of, you know, broach that and bring that up to the public, I think that's a good way of us doing that. And so just being present at, I don't know how much of these, but at least maybe that channel 17,
Yeah.
you know, we can answer any questions about that at
I think
least.
that's great.
Yeah, Elizabeth and I, we haven't had the opportunity, so this would be kind of a first that we've had our student reps join us for the Channel 17, which Elizabeth and I would very much welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think prior to that, we can do a little bit of, you know, they do ask some questions, but we can kind of push to say, you know, can you talk a little bit more specifically or ask questions to our students? So we can talk about that and also talk about the types of things we want to get out.
Yeah.
So, can you, at the high school, don't encourage people to vote one way or another, we usually don't do that, but just to get out and vote, because I know there's a number of high school seniors generally who are eligible to vote, and this is a good opportunity to try to get them to register and to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there something you might be able to do in that?
Well, sorry, I'll let you speak to. We can do that interpersonally. I'm sure we could also make an announcement if we wanted to. Do you
Yeah,
have
and
any
like the
further
best way
thoughts on
I
that?
think about it, like when I think of trying to get announcements across my class, we usually set up like a class meeting. I know Mr. Burke could probably speak to this best, like if the seniors were to have a class meeting, or if they do have any upcoming ones for graduation, it could just be mentioned, because I think it does apply to the seniors the most. and I don't know if it's tough to have a meeting for like advisory or something, but I think that would be the most impactful. I know like announcements over the loudspeaker, not many people hear that.
Patrick-
No, that's helpful.
Patrick, and again, I know we talked about this in the past, but Patrick typically takes the leadership to set up absentee ballots where people can get information from the city and also voter registration and talks about it. I think Patrick with his certainly staff, but also students of eligible age and kind of practicing the democratic process. I think you'd be open to continuing that, Patrick.
Yeah, I work with Don Kimball
Yeah, so he,
on facilitating absentee ballots, not only for, current students who can often just vote on campus or go across the street or whatever, but also for recent grads and serving in the military or away at college and whatnot. So I've been doing that for a number of years. And then in terms of, I'd love to give the 2 student board members an opportunity to especially talk to the senior class. We've never done that before. I think that's a pretty cool idea. Between now and town meeting day, we'll definitely have a senior class meeting. And, I'll just pop you guys on the agenda. That would be a pretty good opportunity. And I think, the most important message that, we want our seniors to get, not all of them are 18, of course, but the most important message that we want them to get is to register and to participate in the democratic process and educate themselves on the issue. And however they vote, obviously, quite obviously, that's up to them, but we want to make sure that, that's certainly part of our, it's part of our broad mission,
It's in our hands, citizenship.
There you go.
Right. So.
great. So if you have other things you want to put on here, certainly let us know.
One question I had, and Martin and I haven't really discussed it, is what we need to do in terms of getting other people's approval or how we want to run the Facebook page, basically.
Right.
Because I think we had been sort of loosely talking about running it in a similar way to the way it was run last time, which is sort of breaking up bits of information into sort of shorter bites and putting that on the Facebook page. And Martin and I still continuing to do that. The question is, how much we need to interact with everyone else to get approval for different topics or different specific posts, or if everyone's comfortable with us continuing to kind of run with it, which is what we did last time. I just wanted to make sure that we had clarity on that before we really started, because it would be good to start that pretty soon, probably.
So with that, the budget book, what's the dead timeline for the budget book? And the reason I'm raising that is there's a lot of material in there that we could cut and paste.
Well,
and
we
put
actually,
online.
John and I just talked briefly this afternoon, but, he's currently working on it today.
We're scrambling, trying to get it done before the steering committee meeting next week.
I think it needs to be submitted by, it's this month it needs to be submitted.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to say it needs to be like, it's like the,
28th or something.
it's right before the, I think 28th, 27th, something like that.
So
We don't have a lot of time.
I guess I would, so we usually get a chance to take a
Yeah.
quick look at it.
24-hour look at it, yeah.
Would certainly like to see that again, and then perhaps Bridget and I can meet, and if we're cribbing it from there, I don't think that unless
need
we're
approval.
changing anything, I don't
Don't
think
need a lot
it's a
of-
matter of just cutting and pasting.
Well, the other thing is, I wondered if John, if you would be comfortable with us cribbing part of your very detailed and very clear equalized pupil discussion. That was sort of the best,
Take whatever you
the
want.
best layout
Take
that
whatever you
I've
want from it.
seen of that. It clarified things for me that I didn't actually even
That's
have a
right.
grasp of.
I wrote that very quickly. If there's anything that I left unclear, please let me know and I'll try to fix it.
No, I think that's well done, and part of the FAQs in the budget book, we were gonna, John is gonna try to shorten those down a little bit. But certainly, in the meantime, I think taking that and
Yeah.
shaping it into,
And I think we can, I don't think we have to start until, I think we start hitting it when people can actually vote absentee or early voting,
Right.
which is what, like, the last week of January 1st of February, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
Because
can
too
always
early,
give them- yeah.
they ignore it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't pay attention to it. Yeah, it's true.
So we can talk maybe at the end of next week or something, plan on that.
So I don't want to jump ahead, but this is kind of like a bridge topic between the communication plan and the other paper articles. So there was a little bit of discussion I had with Delina and Meg, and then I spoke to Judy Kearns about what exactly we're allowed to put in our board column. And she was a little worried, Delina, that she was unclear with you and Meg about, she's okay with us doing a very similar article to what I wrote last year, which is just a very factual article. This is the budget that was passed, here are how things are changing. We don't have room to put any kind of slant on it, so we always try to keep that out anyway, in terms of, like, we can't encourage people to vote for it, you know, we can't really push the budget, but we can sort of describe exactly what's in the budget and explain, you know, why some of the changes were made. And so she's totally comfortable with that. That would need to be the very next article that's in. It would be due on Thursday of next week, so a week from tomorrow. Because, Elizabeth, she wanted me to point this out to you, and I think you already probably know this from past experience. The article that's gonna come out on March 1st, which would be due on February 22nd, there can't be any ballot-related ideas at all in it, because there's no time for rebuttal in the paper, or, you know, if there are corrections that have to be made or something, there's no time to correct those issues before people vote, because that's the last issue before people vote. So the February 22nd, when we come to that, you know, broader topic of what the article is, we just have to make sure that anything that's gonna be ballot-related has to be in this article that goes in next week.
Is the March 1st one a regular board article?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. So I should very clear, and you know this already, but I'll clarify for everyone else too. So we can have more of a slant in terms of, you know, selling the budget a little bit in space that we buy and ad space. It's just that these are our two board columns. So we have a board column that has a deadline of next Thursday that will go in February something, very early February. And then there's one that has a deadline of February 22nd that goes in March 1st. So this is the last board column, I should say. That's our last board opportunity. But she doesn't want anything really in the March 1st paper that relates to ballot items.
Unless we can purchase them.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say the board columns typically are not topics that would be rebutted regardless, but what I'm hearing you say is she just doesn't want, due to the timing, budget-related items in that March 1st column, right?
That's right. And yeah, budget, or I had suggested to her perhaps that might be a good column. I was just throwing off at the top of my head, you know, other topics that could potentially come up for that column, like things that are happening in Montpelier. And she's like, I would be really careful with anything in Montpelier that then might have some kind of effect on the voting or what's on the ballot. And so she was basically steering us to sort of do something completely away from things that people are going to be voting on. So, you know, just other topics that are happening in the school district that we want to comment on would be better for that column.
Okay, what do we want to comment on that's completely non-controversial, unrelated to our budget? Can't say anything about how great we're doing, because that would,
But again, you can purchase, you know, space.
no, I know, but putting that aside, well, I've jumped ahead to other papers, so I apologize. I was just looking at our list, and I could do implementation of the new mascot, but that'd be not a good idea right before the vote. Education spending, no.
Martin,
Master plan, yes.
are we on number 14, other paper articles?
Well, we're kind of, I guess
Back and
we've
forth.
moved on to 14, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so-
we have.
All right, so I have go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead, if you have other ideas for the March article.
Yeah, I had a question. When we were negotiating with the teachers union back in September, was it October? How much of what went on in the back and forth can we disclose?
Also not a good idea for March, but.
Right. I'm just thinking about what, could we possibly turn that into an article?
No, because I think part of the requirements or sideboards we were given when we talked about doing a school board article is it's not the kind that the other paper has to feel they have to provide an opposing side to weigh in. And so that's why we've actually stayed away from negotiation issues on that.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was actually the issue that came up there. I might be writing in my column in legislative about very similar topics, frankly, actually, in the next couple months. So I'll run it by you when I do. But, so.
So I mean, one
for
idea,
March,
for
yeah.
example, could be, you know, as we were just talking earlier in the meeting about the fact that PLPs have now been pushed all the way down through the middle school, and they're starting to do their conferences, and there's starting to be some, you know, more work done around that. We could talk about that. I'm just brainstorming potential
PLPs.
ideas.
I mean, the whole bonding conversation is one that's, you know, I don't, you know, how we communicate that. Obviously, it's a big part of the budget conversation, but, you know, when we do them, I don't know what you're thinking about related to the other paper. I assume that in the budget, you know, the one that will run, you know, early in February, that we'll have a piece. But I think that's a pretty important topic to hit on, because bonding is likely gonna be upon us for, you know, a good chunk of some years here moving forward.
Yeah, David, I didn't bring this up under agenda item 11, but I also think if we don't have it already, we should include something in the FAQs about the debt service track record within the district and some comparables around Chittenden County, because that is a highlight, one for our district, but two, you know, that supports the bonding story too.
Yep, good point. We actually, I think, John, you've pulled that together before, right? Our bonding, our current bonding condition and how we compare to others, right?
I did.
Yeah, but a good point.
So it's gonna run on 3/1, the budget, no, wait, 2/1, I'm sorry, February 2nd, first. The article about budget. Should we plan on an article that we pay for any of those other weeks to kind of pick, you know, topics that we think are most important that we can get into a little bit? Bonding can be one of them. I mean, is it worth to pay for those for 2 or 3? I guess it would be 3 that it'd be 2 that we'd be able to do. We'd only be able to do no, I'm sorry. I'm getting my math wrong. I'm looking at the wrong calendar. I'd have to look.
There's
at it.
several weeks really we
Yeah,
can pay
there's several
for,
weeks that we
because,
could,
yeah,
Yeah.
we have,
I mean, the other thing is
Not
kind of the
too much.
master planning. I mean, we're continuing to work to populate that, you know, our decision-making rubric, right, that's been
Yeah.
outlined. And we're gonna continue to have conversations around some of those various elements within the master planning. That's one I think that I'm a little bit worried, that's why we've been talking about it, but I don't really wanna get to the April sharing without getting people activated to listen in about master planning.
master plan could be a good one.
You know-
Because we will have had the Dora and Whittier
That's right.
presentations by then, sort
Yeah.
of an initial,
Yeah.
And that kind of goes hand in hand with the
Picture.
bonding, you know, in part, the bonding.
it won't affect this year's
That's
bonding or
right.
what's on the ballot this year, but it will,
It's coming, and
Yeah.
what we need to do to,
So master planning would be the March.
the March article, so the one that's due on February 22nd.
The other, if we're talking about sort of topics that support the budget conversation from a sequential standpoint, I also think staffing and enrollment would be a good topic.
Yep.
And then don't forget we have the full page ad too, which has a pretty set format to it, but some of the topics could be covered in a more summarized way there.
So I think we would just have 3 additional opportunities, 3 additional editions of the other paper. I don't think we're allowed to put, like you said, anything on the 1st of March, right?
Right.
So we would have 3, if we're gonna do 3 additional articles, advertisement/articles, budget, the bonding could be one, staffing and enrollment could be the other, and then we can think about what else, you know, when we meet again on the 7th of February, maybe decide what the other one is.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
The only other thing I forgot to mention, Judy said that that one, the last paper before the vote, whatever we put in, paid for or not, should not be by Elizabeth or me.
Right,
Because it looks like we're giving an unfair advantage to us if someone else is running against us. It sort of looks like free advertising for us, basically.
Right.
Or district paid for advertising, if you will, for us. So we just need to keep that in mind.
So we need to flip a coin for master planning between Steve, Alex, and me. I'll note that I did one, just last month.
Okay, I'll pony up.
And Steve is the other member of but Steve is the other member of the subcommittee, so.
All right, that means, Alex, you get to do whatever we're gonna do in, March.
All right.
And we'll have it brought, it'll be more wide open. And I will plan on, and I guess either the April or May, I'll happy to do one on what happened with legislative stuff.
The other thing we
Whichever.
might want to talk about is what we just kicked off today was the Director of Learning search. So at some point in the
Update.
spring, we'll have an update on that and.
That could go along with what Elizabeth said on staffing, staffing and enrollments, but a kickoff to that could be
Yeah.
new positions, yeah.
All right,
Or not
anything
new
else
positions.
regarding other paper articles or budget communication, which kind of got mushed together?
The only other one that I had written David about, aside from legislative activities, was the Governor's Healthcare Commission, because that study is out, and we had to forego it when she was going to write the article because they had postponed the issuance of that by about a month. It's gonna likely tie in with legislative activities, but it is a pretty comprehensive document in and of itself. So I'll just offer that up as an alternative. And it may be, if we wait too long, there may be some specific recommendations that come out vis-a-vis legislation.
It's kind of what I was thinking, Elizabeth. I mean, if it had been timely, sort of right before our deadline, that might be one thing, but I think you're right. Till we get around to it, it's probably going to be overcome by events.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll see what happens by the first or second week of May, if anything happens at all with that. I mean, I think that writing about what happened in the legislature education-wise, that may be the thing that would cover that. So, speaking of which, not to digress, I introduced the bill today to the Ed Committee.
When you're reading when you're reading the bond, right? Kind of resonated here, just.
Yeah, I meant to announce that I did introduce the collective bargaining reform bill to the committee.
Well
but-
done.
Well, we'll see if I sold them on whether they're gonna take it up. But anyway, number 15, updated Winooski School District Transportation Agreement, and we get another action item.
Yeah, I know. So I put this on here, I honestly didn't really feel like you needed an action because your previous, action agreement was appropriate and it met all the criteria and was vetted. But I'm just gonna ask John to give a quick little update on why we're here. And my decision was just, again, to be transparent. I probably didn't need the action, but I think for full transparency, and accountability, I put it here as action. So John, can you just touch?
This is something that the Winooski School District went out to bid for last summer to help their kids find their way to school on cold winter mornings. And they really couldn't get any interested contractor to bid on it. It was too small a piece for a contractor to be interested. So we said, well, we have a school bus, barn right next door to your place. We'll try to help you out. And we brought it to the board probably 3 months ago now, I think, and kind of described the outlines of it. And you all approved it, given that we could get suitable insurance for this thing, liability coverage, whatever, the state approval of the engagement, and a contract suitable to our attorney. And this contract has been written by our attorney, so he's good with it. We did get a letter from the state, which we've tried to be responsive to this. Now, it no longer looks like a contract. It looks like a joint agreement between school districts, which we can do. And there's a provision in here about reporting it on this year-end stat report, so the state's happy with that. the insurance people, Visbit, gave us an email a while back saying, yeah, you're good to go, you got good insurance for all this stuff. So we've gone ahead and got this approved by the Winooski side, and you guys, you know, you're seeing it for the first time in this form, but I think you saw a previous version. And it actually started yesterday. And first reports are that it's working famously, so
Great.
I know David's probably pleased, I know I'm very pleased to see this actually happen. And I think it's a boon to both this district and Winooski.
Yeah, two buses, just quick, you know, two buses take the first round, they come right back and they take the second group. And both, they've averaged somewhere around 40 and 25 on the first two, and then 40 and 35 on the second two. So, you know, this is right out of the gate. Sean McMahon, who's the superintendent in Winooski, has actually been at the bus stop, you know, just making sure that kids are getting on with other support, and he's extremely happy. Again, this is in direct correlation to making sure kids can get there, and as you know, this has actually been a kind of a tougher winter, colder winter, which is exactly what he was trying to help avoid, and make sure kids get to school and limit the amount of absenteeism. So it's good. Again, I think the frustration, a little bit of frustration, is the state really didn't know how to handle this. And we were not gonna hold up. We met all the criteria before. We did not wanna hold up on this while they tried to figure out what kind of, you know, specific they wanted. And we think this is absolutely right, and we hope that more similar activities like this happen amongst other districts and SUs that can help kind of co-share resources. So Sean has signed it. Again, I put it for action. I think it's appropriate just for you to take action on this one as well, and I'll sign it.
So you do want action on this?
Yeah, I would like that. I think just because we put it there, I don't want to then have no action, so.
Well, I mean, I think it's, any way that we can cooperate with neighboring school districts is a great thing. I mean, I think this is excellent.
Yep.
And the more we can do that, the better. I'll take a motion to approve the transportation joint agreement so that the superintendent can sign it.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? I will take the roll. Elizabeth, did you say no?
No, I said no, yes.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
I'll take the roll. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
All right, it is approved.
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Master planning and visioning discussion.
So we're just talking about, you know, kind of getting into the other paper. I mean, so we've put some, I've been trying to just stay after kind of updating on where we are. I don't really want to read through all of this, but obviously the top are kind of the four areas that, you know, the board and myself have agreed to. Looking at the upgrades at the high school and the middle school, identifying a monitoring system, number 2, developing a contingency plan by April 30th, and then looking at kind of our overall plan with kind of a specific analysis. Current updates, you know, we're currently soon to receive kind of the architectural feedback on mechanical, structural, and electrical from Dor Whittier on the 23rd. Bridget mentioned this earlier. And then we have some other proposed dates that we think may work to kind of keep people updated.
Can I just ask what time that meeting is on the 23rd, and whether board members are welcome at it or not?
Yeah, so board members certainly are invited to that. I don't exactly know off the top of my head.
Okay.
We'll include that and let you know.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Not positive on the time.
Okay.
We'll let you know. And again, we've moved on, again, just to provide additional times where we think it will be important under the information that we're getting back from Dor Whittier around some of those items that may need to be addressed. But again, just information. B talks about enrollment forecast. We do want to have a deeper conversation about the McGibbon report. Again, we talked a little bit about that tonight, but also being able to use that as a resource and around planning for the future of our district. The noise testing and sound mitigation, again, I've updated the board. I did send a letter to the FAA requesting the most immediate response that I can get to get sound insulation going on at the Chamberlain School. And so I have not yet heard back. but I will continue to, I'm gonna give a little bit more time, I'll push again, and then it will be possible that I may reach out to other support to get some responses. That's a critical component to the contingency plan.
Yep.
Um,
So do you have a drop dead date when we're gonna ratchet up the pressure? to the
Well, I
extent
was,
we can?
yeah, I sent it last week, so I'm thinking, sometime mid next week, I'll probably do one more push or a call, and then if I'm not getting a response, I'll utilize some additional resources to see if I can get a response. D is about the noise compatibility program, the technical advisory committee meeting, and Steve and I have been going to those. There's another one coming up on what day, Steve? 25th, yep, thank you. And so that's a big part of that. And then the E is the threshold analysis, or what I'm also sometimes say is the kind of decision-making rubric. And so we've updated that, but again, I think it's important for board members certainly to just be looking at that, and, I'm populating that with other folks in the administration. But you're gonna need to obviously be the ones that will say, I think you got that right, or we need to move it here, and you're gonna be the ones in the end to say, I agree with those ratings, and I agree maybe with a recommendation or not. So, again, I'm just highlighting some of this is not, 100% complete, but gives kind of an overview of the master planning and visioning work, connected to the outcomes that you wanted.
Meetings at
9
9
a.m.
a.m.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
Delina.
Any questions, discussion on that issue? I think that, when we get to the future agenda items, I think we really should set aside a bit of a chunk of time early on when we can focus on it
Yep.
better. We'll get to that point. Hey, we'll get to that point right now. Set agenda. I guess the one thing I would, right away, I'd add on agenda item number 8, the master planning and visioning discussion, add a bullet point there as far as input on threshold or analysis, or just put threshold analysis, that board members should be planning on having looked at that and have a discussion about that and give you our input.
Okay.
So I don't keep on forgetting to do that.
One question I have about a potential agenda item, and maybe, I apologize if I missed this with the ones that I was on the phone, was at some point David Sharp had asked one of us to come and talk before his committee about the letter that we had sent to our legislators. And we had at some point said we would like Elizabeth to be the person to do that. And I don't think we ever sort of squared that circle, or maybe it happened offline. But I just wanted to bring that up again before we get too far into the legislative session. We should probably have some response to that.
So he contacted you?
It was
Or-
actually an email to Delina. He actually asked Delina, because I don't think he quite understood how the structure worked, but Delina had been the person who actually sent out the letters, and so he had asked if someone, or Delina specifically, but we had discussed at some previous board meeting that Elizabeth would probably be the appropriate person to go do that. And I think we still owe him a response. And I don't know if we want to have that on the next week's agenda, or if we just want to.
I think that, no, we should, it would be great if we could respond to him
Sooner. Yeah.
sooner, like in a,
Well-
I mean, if he contacted you, Delina, I mean, is it
maybe-
possible that just the response goes from you to him, copying Elizabeth, that Elizabeth Fitzgerald, if you're okay with this, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I don't think I was aware he had been in touch, but yes, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think we forgot to circle around to you after the last regular meeting.
No problem, so Delina can simply, will respond to David Sharp, and also
Copy
just
Elizabeth. So
copy
she
Elizabeth,
can be
she's chair of the board, and
connected,
should be willing, certainly, and then Elizabeth can work out a time and a whatever.
And I'll remind myself when I'm not gonna be there the next 2 days, so.
Yeah.
But,
Actually, quite honestly, I think Elizabeth and Delina going together could solve most all of the problems of education, actually, so.
absolutely, absolutely.
I think that's good.
I think that would be good.
I'm sorry, Alex, I cut you off. You raised your hand right as I said that, so I'm so sorry. Did I?
Oh, no, that's
did I
fine.
Yeah,
talk
there is
right over
another
you? I'm
item
so
I know
sorry.
that Alex wants to.
There is another item. I have been interested in the, I believe it's a Senate bill that would change the age at which you can buy tobacco products from 18 to 21. And I would like to put that on our February 7th agenda for discussion and potential action. I don't know what, what the outcome would be from discussing it, whether we would make it an addendum to our legislative letter, just a show of support for the bill, or what. I guess we can figure it out then. But I'd like to present some evidence to, that I believe shows that it is pertinent to the school board, and perhaps we could discuss it then.
So, could we, I think it's fine, if, we should probably put this on there, you know, put it like, after number 9, I think, are we doing ends monitoring, is that for sure?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, let's get the master planning and executive limitations thing up, first. But could we get, is it Mariah Larkin? Did I get the first name right?
Mariah Larkin, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
could we get somebody who deals with this kind of issue to come and just, I mean, because that supports, you know,
She's
our
our
ability to say, you know.
substance abuse, right? Is
Yeah,
it?
she's substance abuse, but I would assume she
Uh,
deals with tobacco.
It's not a
issues,
right
or
title, is it,
whoever-
Patrick?
Excuse me?
What's her title? It's SA,
Student assistance.
yeah.
Like,
program
would she be the right
counselor.
person for,
Yeah.
to weigh in that, hey, our
Sure.
kids in high school who get cigarettes are getting them from kids who are 18, 19, 20? You know, that's part of the argument. Or
I mean,
whatever, yeah, I don't want
We
to
don't
tell
have,
her
there's
what to
probably
tell
like
us.
7 kids that actually smoke actual cigarettes in the high school, if you wanted to.
In the high school?
No, period. But if you want to talk about vaping, I'd love to strangle the person who invented that. Just a side note.
Well,
Well, the
we
bill
can-
covers that as well.
Awesome. No, the answer to Dave's question is definitely Mariah's the person.
Okay.
Do you think we can, you know, like 10 minutes to have her?
I don't know.
Because that gives us more of a basis on which
Do you want to
to
do this under, like, legislative
She can
items?
also just prepare a brief for you guys too, if you don't, you know, she can just do something in writing. She can read the bill and,
That would be,
or
I
she can
think
come
that
in
would be
person,
fine.
whatever
Okay.
works for you.
Well, having taken up the initiative here, I'm happy to contact Mariah and,
Well, I would do that
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
for you,
Right.
Alex,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that would be fine. I just want to have something more to base it on directly from our people in the schools. That gives us a best ground on which to, you know, weigh in on this.
yes.
So
I agree.
I'm a little unclear, where do you want to put it? You put it after
I'd put a
ends
number
monitoring?
between
You want
9
to
and
call it
10
a
on-
separate item?
Yeah, I'd call it a separate item, yeah.
And you want to call the item,
I mean, if there's other things we want to give.
Legislative
I was wanting to do
discussion.
legislative discussion, and then the first bullet point would be
That'd be
this
fine.
one.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I don't know,
That
I mean,
work?
I can give an update on some of the other things that are going on by then.
Mhm.
That gives me, 2 weeks.
Well, the other thing,
to get
Elizabeth
something
may
done.
have questions as well, because we may have
Elizabeth, yeah.
contacted David, but not have been in front of him yet, so it might be good to prep her a little bit for that.
Right, and that's who I was in front of today. I mean, that's his committee, and that's who I was trying to convince to take up this bill further. So,
Okay, so it'd be
The more we can talk to him,
legislation,
the better.
discussion, update, and then under that would be the tobacco, and then,
For the, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what, is it S88?
I don't.
I don't know.
I have trouble keeping.
well,
track of
we'll
the
need to,
ages.
we'll need to make the change to the agenda.
Okay.
And, we may need some help with that, but fine.
So, and if we could get something from Mariah, whether it's whatever works better for her, I suppose. writing and-
Combination maybe. Okay,
Any other changes to the agenda for this week? No. All right, moving on. Future agenda items, do we need to change this at all? Anything to add or to schedule? Hearing none, we'll go on to 19. Consider the minutes. All right, where are the minutes? We have a couple different minutes, right?
January 3rd,
Let's
January 10th.
start with the January 3rd minutes. Are there any comments, questions, corrections? Seeing none, by consensus, that one is adopted. January 3rd.
did a nice job as acting clerk putting these together.
Oh,
Just found out about 2 seconds ago that I was the acting clerk.
That's right. Acting clerk, you know, I think actually probably the acting clerk is supposed to have done the roll call, probably, you know, when I think of it, next time. All right, January 10th, are there any questions, comments, changes to the minutes? Seeing none, hearing none from the phone, those are approved as well. Count payable orders, accounts payable orders, any questions on those? Seeing none. Number 21, I need a motion to approve the accounts payable order check to Howard Center for Human Services in the amount of $80,788.34.
So moved.
And also the Center for Technology Essex in the amount of $71,254.50. Do we want to take those separately, or do we want to do them in one motion?
Both of them as a group.
You're moving them together.
second
We have a
the
motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? I do have one question. The $71,254, obviously, I assume is that a one-time payment that we pay for students that we have sent over?
No.
Or can you explain what that one is a little bit first?
No, so that's for our technical education program,
Right.
Center for Technology. So this is one of the installments. I don't know
Okay.
exactly when the next one will be, but
I don't know. if
the
it's
billing period.
twice. I suspect it's twice a year, but I wouldn't swear to that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, I will take a roll. Steve?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Bridget?
Aye.
And Alex?
Aye.
Right.
And anything else? Otherwise, motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor? I'm not taking a roll on that one.
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, audience.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, community member. And thank you, Corey, and thank you, Marcy.